The Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world. Seems to be kind of an underrated anime going on right now. I don't really feel like I see it getting the love that I think it should. And I think it's because on the surface level, it just seems like fan service and satire. And while it definitely has a little bit of those things, I actually think there's pretty good storytelling in the show. And it's more than just making fun of the Power Rangers or a girl in a skimpy outfit with giant anime titties. And I think it's actually a show with pretty well constructed world building and characters. And if you've checked out the manga, the story gets better as it goes. And while the moves have ridiculous names and things are powered up by the strength of his bonds, and the enemies are called breakup villains and all kinds of absurd stuff, it's actually pretty solid underneath the surface level satirical stuff that's pretty funny. So there will be spoilers. The main characters are Togo, Asagaki, and Yidra Arvoln. And these are your main two. And the show does have a bit of a rom-com element, and it's not a harem, thank God. So the main premise is that Asagaki was about to die and got teleported to this other world. In his world, he was Kazuna Red, who's essentially just the Red Ranger. There was a group of 5 of them, really powerful, fighting villains. And he meets up with Yidra, who is a sorceress who wants to become essentially the best one to get respect back on her dad's name, who she believes was slandered. And like all good anime characters, they have kind of tragic backstories. Yidra wants the royal scepter, and her long-term goal, besides, getting her father's honor back and her family name's honor back, is to make magic accessible to everyone and just make life easier on people in general. And everyone thinks that she's crazy except for Asagaki. And Asagaki wants to get back to his home world, and she's the only person who's ever actually offered to help him. So they end up being a pretty good pair because they're both very odd and people think they're crazy and they have ridiculous goals, but they're both very supportive of each other. And while the show kind of covers it up with humor, his weapons work on the strength of bonds and he gets more powerful with bonds, and he says bonds like 1 billion times in the show. I do like the underlying message of people sticking to their beliefs and believing themselves regardless of what people around them think. Obviously, in a different story, that could easily be your villain, but their beliefs are obviously very positive. They want people to make connections and just be happy and make life better for the people around them. And as you go and you get introduced to more characters, there are characters they don't go along with very well, like Logi, who just really doesn't like Asagaki, and he's the guard for Princess Teltina. And one of the parts of their relationship between Logi and Asagaki that's interesting is kind of this striving for independence and Logi cutting off his nose to spite his own face. And obviously part of his arc and one of the lessons that he learns throughout the story is that even though he's afraid of becoming dependent on other people and letting himself become weaker, if he uses his abilities the right way, him and the people around him can become greater than just the sum of their parts. And he can actually be way stronger than he is on his own. And one of the fun things too, even though it's played up sometimes as a joke, is a lot of the people who they fight have these privilege spells that they're under that make them way more powerful, and they have certain goals in mind, but it ends up costing them a lot more. And a lot of people who use the privilege spells are kind of blinded or obsessed with one thing in particular, and it ends up being at the cost of everything around them. So even though they're given this kind of quick and easy path to power, it consumes them to the point where they can't even really enjoy their success if they were to achieve it, or it would be hollow. And as the story goes on, you get a flashback to Asagaki's world, where you find out that he had a friend who became one of the bond-breaking villains or bond-destroying villains. He had to fight him over and over until eventually they became close again. And Asagaki was an adopted kid, and the biological kid felt overshadowed and insecure and jealous. And that's what led him down the path of becoming a villain, wanting to hurt people instead of help them. All pretty basic stuff, but it's just all good messaging that is hidden under a lot of the humor and jokes and anime titties and all that sort of thing. And as you go on, you explore a lot more of the villains' backgrounds or the antagonist backgrounds, and you sort of see how life can make people frustrated and pissed off. They take it out on the people around them. And I think one of the better parts, you find out that Asagaki actually had a 6th member of the Kazuna team. And obviously she died, and he blames himself. And when he gets so afraid of losing the people around him, he lets himself be consumed by his anger and negative emotions to fight. And he's temporarily more powerful, but then he can't discern who his allies are and the people he cares about. So he puts them at risk. And at the end of the day, Asagaki's motivation stems from losing his parents at a young age, from being an orphan, and understanding the importance of being close to the people around you and forming bonds, as he would like to say repeatedly. And it makes her just an interesting protagonist to have obviously a tragic backstory, but be very optimistic and try to use that negative backstory to create positive change. I'm not going to go on long about this one. It's not some life-changing story. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and get your shit together because you've seen this show. But I do think that it's being viewed as kind of just a joke, satire, goofy show with a main female character with a really revealing outfit and giant anime titties. But I think underneath the surface, it's just a really simple but well executed story with messages that are just fundamentally good messages for people. And it's just a really positive show without being too heavy or serious, even though a lot of the characters have sad backstories. So I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. Just a fun, positive, lighthearted show that I think there's a little bit more to than what's on the surface. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. I try to respond to all the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.